Roll20 keep their hopes for the Western Clash alive by getting a 3-0 victory over No Tomorrow, and now we look toward Gale Force eSports. Gale Force have already qualified for the Western Clash, but their seeding is yet unknown, and this series is a big part of figuring that out. Do they go in as the top-seeded team from North America, or will someone else, like Team Freedom, be able to take that spot? They're going up against Superstars. Superstars have made a lot of changes throughout Phase 2.
Yeah, again, that front-loaded schedule, Gale Force eSports kind of paying off when it comes to the standings. Those were so heavy, crucial wins out of week number 1 and 2 for them, and now to the point where, I mean, Superstars is not going to be an easy series for them, but it very much is one where they're favored, and they've got to feel very confident going into it.
Let's check out the standings of North America and see what has transpired post that victory for Roll20, and that is that they find themselves tied with No Tomorrow, but again, it comes down to a head-to-head, and Roll20 have been able to hurdle over No Tomorrow in that. And Tempo Storm, if they were to lose to Team Freedom in their match tomorrow, would put them in that three-way tie that makes that tiebreaker between Tempo Storm and Roll20 possible. That would be played on Sunday. Meanwhile, we have another 2 teams that are tied in standings so far, Team Freedom and Gale Force, both of them hoping that they can take the top seed from North America. And as we talk about Team Freedom, Dread, we can say now that with a victory, Roll20, Glaurung was saying that, you know, he's Team Freedom's biggest fan, but Team Freedom should be Roll20's biggest fans right now because that victory means that Team Freedom have qualified for the Western Clash, so huge congratulations for them. Team Freedom, it is monumental of a victory for them.
It's the equivalent of what we experienced at phase number 1 with Roll20, where it was a lot of new players. Yes, you do recognize the name of Glaurung and some of the other players you've heard of here and there, but as a unit coming out of nowhere and being able to qualify internationally, again, it just mixing things up in North America. So huge shout out to what Team Freedom has been able to do, but we got other teams in other regions. I mean, the fact that we got Nomia, Red Canids here, and we've already saw earlier today where Europe has Fnatic, Expert, and Team Liquid. We only have 1 remaining for North America, but again, we're still questioning the seeding for the North American teams, even as high as Freedom and GFE.
Yes, Gale Force and Freedom, their fates have not been figured out yet as far as the seeding for where they will enter into the Western Clash bracket. And for that last North American spot, unfortunately, No Tomorrow are no longer able to fight for that spot. And it is very likely that it will be Tempo Storms, but if Team Freedom can 3-0 Tempo Storm, we will get to see that epic, amazing tiebreaker match between Roll20 and Tempo Storm on Sunday.
So really what it comes down to is only for that final spot in North America, there is 1 series and 1 result that can determine if there could be any other team. Otherwise, and in fact would be Tempo Storm, and that is between Team Freedom and Tempo Storm, and it all comes down to a 3-0 against Tempo. And so it's just like, Roll20 has got to be, like, obviously they are the biggest fans, but it is still so very unlikely for them to be able to make it to the Western Clash.
Yeah, you've got Team Freedom standing in the ring, and Roll20 is there giving the back massages, doing everything, handing the bottle of water. What can we do to help make sure that you guys give us this opportunity for the tiebreaker match?
And I haven't even begun to thought about this, what that can do in terms of practice over the practice in the time being from now until then. Like, that incentivizes essentially Roll20 to be like, we can make you the best version possible, right? Like, and trying to build them up to be like, represent, help me out, help us, help you, a type deal. This is really crazy, you know, how this has played out.
It's very cool, and it's all because our North American region is getting even more and more competitive, and all the teams able to take victories off of each other. But let's talk about another match, because we've got Gale Force eSports versus Superstars. Let's hear from the players themselves.
We're really confident in our series coming up this weekend against Superstars. They're a really good team, but more so we just want to win out the rest of the season and only end with 1 loss this split. So there's a lot behind it for us, and this match is pretty important. If we don't get surprised by any crazy drafts, Superstars doesn't really have much of a chance. They're still coming together as a roster, and I think we've been moving more fluidly with our roster, so I don't think that this series will go to 5 games, but I mean, it's definitely possible. With the Western Clash coming up, we're going to be focusing a lot on giving our best performance there. It's going to be our first international event as a team with this roster, so we're going to do whatever it takes to give our best showing. We're going to put in a ton of hours and hopefully get a lot of scrims with the European teams to be ready for the upcoming competition.
So with Stray moving over back to shot calling and tanking, it's actually a really natural transition for him and our team. The entire last split, we had that dynamic, so it's actually very natural and it's working really well for us so far. Erho and Yoda has different ways that they see the game. Erho is a very aggressive player and Yoda is more methodical, where Srey likes to combine both of those methods. When looking at Gale Force's players individually, they're all very good. And one of them particularly, Fan, he's always impressed me. He's just probably one of the best players in North America, if not the best. Well, as far as goals, I don't think you'll hear any team saying that they don't want to qualify for BlizzCon. That's why we all play the game. But we're really going to look at it 1 week at a time and try to get every win we can so we could have a good placing going into BlizzCon.
Obviously, the biggest change for Superstars yet for them is moving Srey back after trying him out on a ranged flex position now to the primary warrior as well as shot calling. And I was taken aback at how Hosty was able to talk about what that means for Erho and Yoda. I felt like I was wondering if it would be more difficult for them to all of a sudden be under a different shot caller, especially Erho, who had been calling for the team. But it did seem like things were going as planned and really well, and that's why they were able to so smoothly transition into doing as well as they did last week.
Yeah, and it's also cool to kind of hear about that. He felt like even within the own team, like that they see it from different angles, and that's something like, for instance, when I was playing that I heavily dealt with is that like different players view the game in different angles, not only just between what is good and bad overall, like decision making and shot calling level, but even when it comes to how you determine the strength of an individual character, right? Some go with like, well, if I play it in solo queue and it felt very good the whole time, then it obviously is an objectively powerful character that we want to select, versus the others go, well, the math doesn't add up, right? You'll be like, well, I've done the math over and over again. There's no way where in perfect scenario this should be able to outweigh that. And that kind of different perspectives and clashing can make or break teams personally. And it's nice to feel like, you know, Hosty talking about Srey melding everyone's different angle and kind of coming up with Superstar's game plan.
That's why you always sigh at me whenever I lock into Ronda all of a sudden. I get it now.
Yeah, that's it. You'll be like, it feels good, I'm blowing people up. And I'll be like, but the wave clear problem we got going on here, we're going to have to make up somewhere. Yeah.
All right, let's get into this series. We've got the battleground for game number 1, and it will be Braxis Holdout, chosen by Gale Force eSports, none other. The bans, Superstars has banned Cursed Hollow, and Gale Force continuing with their Dragonshire ban, which I did wonder if that will hurt Superstars since it has been a favored battleground for them.
Yeah, and especially because now that Superstars... Okay, so Superstars came in, and the small maps like Tomb and Dragger were the high focus, and that was when Srey was leading. Then they moved Srey to the different role, right? And everybody was trying to debate what was their new map, because they were mixing things up. So with him coming back, I go, well, those maps are now going to be that much more impactful for them. So banning out the Dragonshire really could hurt and devastate Superstars a bit more than they'd be used to. But no surprise, Gale Force brought us to Braxis Holdout here. Due to the bans, that is a very predictable pick coming out from them. And we're ready for the draft here of Game 1.
So we know what Gale Force has been enjoying playing on Braxis Holdout so far. They really like to have the Vala Ario, which makes sense when you think about it, as well as the Illidan later on. That tends to be their top laner. Well, no surprise there. They're not going to get it. Superstars again showing how much research they put into their opponents.
Yeah, they very much spend the time to be able to figure out what they think is the best opportunity to take out their opponents, do the research, getting the dance going on every time we hear this jam, get it bumping.
Although I do like the Braxis Holdout music.
Yeah,
that's my electric guitar.
Yeah. Just hit the whammy bar, you know, get it rolling. Gale Force is taking a bit, though, for their ban specifically. Tassadar, in the last series, was a very interesting priority difference between the teams, sometimes being ban-worthy, other times making a post-secondary ban phase. Specifically that Sky where I was talking about, like, oh, I'm surprised Tass wasn't picked up here. It made it all the way second ban phase. So Gale Force, though, they ended up committing to it. They rid of that Tassadar. Genji locked in for Superstars, no surprise. And for a map that does consider wave clear, one of the better ones to have Genji because rotations are also important.
I am a little bit... I wouldn't say surprised, but interested in this Genji pick for Superstars. That being, or the reason being that they did start off with a lot of focus on Genji for Hosty, and then not really working out the best for them. They started to shift more towards banning him. They've only won 1 out of the 5 games that they've drafted him on so far. But like Dread said, it's a good battleground to have him on because of his rotations, how quickly he can move between beacons and try to backdoor them.
And, you know, we talked a little bit about how I felt like Talking Trees, especially on Genji release, once he started playing the Genji, that he's a player who's just been subtly getting better and better for the squad. And I always feel like Hostie's the same.
Yeah.
And so, like, the idea of, you know, implementing him onto the Genji, and now that they're willing to pick that back up for themselves, I really do feel like bodes well for Superstars. You know, and Gale Force, though, on the other side, they picked up the Anubarak and the Dahaka, so still a lot of focus onto the globals, going with the Dahaka themselves. And with the Illidan banned out, it makes a lot of sense. You know, suddenly you have a far more appealing 1v1 matchup, but also 1v1s are really unlikely on maps like Braxis Holdout and North American Scene.
Superstars may revert back into their Malthael to try to make sure that they have somebody who can contend with that Dahaka, but also could be some sort of different laning setup as well. We'll have to see. They also have an availability for Uther, for Iacona.
Malfurion, though, high priority. With
Stitches.
With the Stitches making a lot of sense. Iacona has been, I want to say, the only Malfurion of North America. Like, to prioritize it a little bit higher than some of the others, but he's definitely been more comfortable picking up the Malfurion for himself. Always avoiding the Moonburn, though. He always goes with the scouting drone, but, you know, the synergy here that they're going to have, the kill potential with that Strangling Vines after the hook is so very good.
It's also currently their highest win rate hero, especially, for heroes that they have played more than, say, 1 game of, that they have a 5 out of 6 rate with him. So it is a hero that they feel really confident with, and they showed how much they prioritize having Stitches as well last week.
The Chromie's being hovered here for Gale Force. Chromie's been essentially meta only on Braxis Holdout. We did have, you know, when Europe was the first to kind of bust out a couple of Chromie strategies here and there, North America looked at it and they were like, you know, we respect the Chromie, you're right. We like a little bit of what it's got going on, but it's fallen off significantly, and the only map she still shows herself, but it's almost every time, is on Braxis. It's just, and certain teams are like, nope, we're first picking it. For instance, like Freedom prioritizes the Chromie so very high, but then teams like Gale Force and Superstars, it can go as low as second ban phase. Again, a lot of diversity.
I wonder if this means that we're going to see Gale Force once again go back to Lieutenant Morales, wanting to make sure that Chromie can't drain her on her mana.
Yeah, and you know, Gale Force, specifically Akaface, he's been by far the most flexible. I don't even know if flexible is the way to describe it, because flexible means in any direction he'd be willing to move it. But it's like he's either meta or it's his too, right? Like the Bright Wings, the Lieutenant Morales is going to be higher of value, whereas things like Karazim seem to kind of drop down, you know? His priority overall in Gale Forces in the support world has been so awesome to kind of watch unfold.
Banned from Superstars is Ariel now, since they won't be picking it up for themselves, wanting to make sure that Gale Force doesn't have that opportunity of the Vala Ariel, Lunara Ariel combination, deadly duo, if you will.
Dynamic duo?
Mm-hmm.
We got to be better at that. We got to come up with, like, fanciest words in the world. Like, dynamic duo, that's rinse and repeat,
Destructive duo.
I'm gonna take a ring check.
Debilitating duo.
I like that one a bit more, but it doesn't have maybe the ring we're looking for, Gilly. Just sit on it for a moment.
Dynamo duo. Okay.
Okay. Oh man, but for GFE now, they have a lot of different directions. Obviously, picking both of their warriors, they've got to be the direction that they want to move here. The first focus has got to be the Stitches and the Malfurion, the lockdown and kill potential they have onto them. And with Tassadar gone, Ariel's been removed. They even wait on their support. I expected at least Akka to lock in one of his supports there so they could flex that last roll. But again, showing that maybe Akka's priority on flexing is even more important than the backliners. That's a really interesting priority. And
Gale Force, again, sticking with the multiple global composition.
Yeah.
Which is a question that we had, is how far they would take this past Freedom and even in Death.
Apparently it is their meta, right? They're back to GFE is the global team in the North American scene. That it isn't just kind of that one time this weekend specifically deal. But now for Superstars, they could move into like the Gale Force, you know, to try and get that trinity together, the lethal combination. And Genji works pretty well with that. It gives them a little bit of wave clear, but it also just puts a lot of emphasis on teamwork coming up from Superstars. Not that it is not something they can't get away with, but you know, for a team that's been struggling, we saw what even No Tomorrow can, you know, when they have those overly synergistic comps, it can fall apart.
So far, Superstars has been very focused on running double warrior compositions. We asked Ray about it before, and he did say that it was more so a meta thing, that they were able to run different compositions if necessary. But because they do have 2 warrior players, now with Sray and Airho, they're going to continue with the Stitches Arthas duo that they were playing last week, and they'll round things out with Yoda's Li Ming.
Double resets, making it pretty easy for Gale Force to be able to deal with how these team fights are going to happen. It's nice that they have the Mighty Gus on their side to buy a bit of time that things go really sour early on, even having the opportunity to move in Cocoon. Really good disengage here. Question now is, do we see them commit to the Brightwing, or is it going to be the Lieutenant Morales, or instead do we find ourselves the Uther? I didn't even, you know, I had to look at all the picks and be like, am I crazy? Uther's still alive and available here.
He is? That is the most played hero for Akaface. Potentially, man, I don't think it would be anything else, but maybe Rhaegar. Okay.
I was afraid to say that I really wanted to avoid the Lieutenant Morales pick up there, even though, again, Akaface is very comfortable making that happen, because if we take a minute to appreciate the win condition and ideal team fights for Superstars and how they work, again, they're extremely, we're going to open, we need this to happen, and when it does, we're going to win it. Pick a support that can 100% ensure that that is not an option, and conveniently, you know, having the Uther with that Divine Shield is there. Now, I'm wondering if maybe the Ariel ban was a bit out of place for Superstars, just because not only, again, Gale Force has been the most flexible in their supporting to a certain extent, but just it didn't really add up to what they intended to make happen. I would much rather have an Aegis to worry about and then really make sure they get the kill rather than the Divine Shield.
Yeah, it does make sense to want to not allow a Divine Shield to slow down the momentum of Superstars. I think it was more so something that we've seen Superstars do before, and it goes along with the Illidan ban, which is just try to disrupt the style of game that Gale Force wants to play. They wanted to have Illidan in the top lane. That's been their consistent thing on Brox's holdout, be it that they are able to win or not, and then to have Avala Ariel as well for the other lane too. So trying to maybe focus more on not letting Gale Force have the strong things that they like, maybe even over what is going to work best against their composition. We'll see how it works out. We're ready for the game. Game number 1 between Superstars and Gale Force eSports. We're headed to Brax's holdout.
Here they are, Gale Force eSports in the blue. Mike Udall will be on the Dahaka. We're going to have Fan on Falstad. King Caffeine will be the Anu Barak. K1 Pro on Greymane. And Akaface on Uther.
And in the red, Superstars with Sray playing Stitches. Up next, Hosty playing his Genji. Slicing and dicing. Yoda will be following up with resets of his own on Li Ming. Iacona playing that Malfurion, and finally playing Arthas will be Airho.
The real question is it possible while you're slicing and dicing to dice when you should have sliced, or vice versa? Like, or do you always do both at the same time?
Oh yeah, that's a real issue and can get you negative marks in culinary school.
It pretty much is, in fact, like...
Or Genji school.
In the Genji school. It's a bit of the... I like the idea of it being a cyberkinetic Genji ninja school specifically. You know,
yes.
On the ninja school specifically, it's like kind of like, well, you know, should have diced when you slice there. It's the Zeg and the Zag conundrum.
Genji's school for cybernetics and ninja-ness.
Hosty might need to be a faster ninja than I would be. Not even going to throw out the CC. Gale Force eSports there. Understanding that, you know, Genji's not the easiest target to be able to get a pick with. Now they're going to transfer. It looks like the laning choice here is going to be a 3-2 for both teams.
Oh, wow. Drag hits Arthas just before he would have liked to get behind the gate, and now everyone responds for the body block. He's going to head up to the corner, but of course there's no escape there.
Such a sad corner. Nowhere to go once you make it there.
He's like, I'm putting myself in timeout for getting caught by that pick. Sorry, team.
I accept my fate. Oh, man. Superstars, though, already losing first blood over to GFE, and they have managed to pick themselves up not only just one turret, they've drained the secondary. And this is going to give a structural advantage over to Gale Force, a bit of an experience here. And this is something, you know, I expect them to really never let go of.
Yeah, and Superstars were fairly slow to respond to that too, not trying to push in the counter lane. So they don't have any damage on the towers there, so it'll just be some free damage for Gale Force eSports to put them ahead in the early game. But Superstars do have the deadly combination of Stitches and Malfurion to try to tie things up, bring things back at all points. And as you can see, 5-1, the best hero currently for Superstars, with an average KDA on Malfurion of 10.6, which means he is getting the takedowns in, but also playing safe, not getting caught.
Icona has been such high impact there on the Malfurion. Again, that's why I was saying, like, you know, they're one of the few teams that after the rework, I was always like, guys, Malfurion's still, like, in the game. Like, again, he's not maybe tier 1, but Icona was the only one still willing to pick it very early on. Now, obviously, other teams have changed their mind. But he really, I feel like, was part of the reason other teams even started looking at it was Superstars with their Twilight Dreams was really changing momentums of games. You're like, this Superstars, this should be a bit easier, and realizing maybe, you know, the Malfurion is a bit of a problem.
Look at that pun.
It's almost as if that is the reason my name is Dreadnought. You know, one of the two reasons. To Dreadnought. To be fearless.
But that's not how not is spelled.
Don't even. We've had this conversation many a times.
That's my job. To cast this game, Heroes of the Storm, and to
me.
tilt Dreadnought.
Mission complete.
Those are my two jobs. The Twilight Dream, though, is not only going to be... Well, the Malfurion pick is not only going to be synergistic with things like an Arthas, but especially the Stitches. But Twilight Dream and then double resets behind it could be hugely impactful for Superstars when we start to look at post-10 fights against Gale Force.
It is a bit counterintuitive, though I agree with you. Like, once everything kind of comes online, you're like, wow, how did they end up losing? But it forces Icona to have extremely forward positioning. So, like, when a Stitch's hook hits, he should be moving past the kill target to stop the zoning inward, because if he fails to do so, and the kill target is not in range for the Twilight to hit Uther, Divine Shield comes out, and they go, well, now how do you deal with this team fight? So, suddenly Icona has a lot of responsibilities in this game. Urho, once again, getting body blocked to death, and I don't think he's going to be able to make it out this time either.
Now, I was hoping that he could at least give the slows and take long enough with that death so that Hosty could get the counter kill on King Caffeine, but Caff still having Burrow Charge was able to make it out A-okay. Gale Force have gotten 2 picks so far, a slight advantage, and only 10% in the beacons though, so Superstars have at least been able to slow down that.
We also see the Icy Talons there for Urho. We've seen some compositions, some teams willing to go into the all rune tap, auto attack focused playstyle, the unkillable Arthas, if you will. I'm excited to see if they keep going that direction, because we've also seen Icy Talons just for the argument of the damage that he, output that he gets overall. It's not so much the survivability perspective here, but a bit of a quarrel happening up on top after Gale Force found themselves the first fort.
Yeah, you would think with all of the lockdown, with the drag, Hammer of Justice, and a new Barack's crowd controls too, that Arthas would still want to get Icebound Fortitude here, but it comes down to what he feels like his job is in the fights. If he wants to try to just stand on top of a beacon for as long as possible and just sit there and auto attack and be able to regenerate his health and hold on, maybe we will see that rune tap. But Gale Force, getting Guardian of Ancient Kings is going to help a lot with the roots and silences of Malfurion. We often see, we used to see it a lot more, the Uther versus Malfurion matchup, although with the changes to Malfurion, we see it less. Hindering Moonfire for some slows for Icona.
It's going to better Sray's opportunity to be able to get the hooks, but it also removes a bit of the kill potential, onto Sray specifically. Granted, Uther provides more than just healing. He's shielding and armor, which is not affected by that talent. But it might be something, that comes back to haunt them. We'll see how much utility between the Elun's Grace, Poke, and Slow they get to make Sray, essentially have an unmissable hook.
Do you think that indicates that they are more concerned with the armor that Uther can give than the actual burst heals itself?
I'm a bit torn on this, mainly because Icona has been extremely rigid in his build. Going with, he has always been, again, like talking about the level 1s, I expected him to be the one fluctuating the most, but in fact, he is very much scouting drone, Elun's into hindering, has been the go-to time and time again. And most times, I would be like, that is the default. Maybe a Moonburn here at level 1, but the Elun's into hindering makes a lot of sense, the utility it provides. But again, when you have the Stitches, you go, well, isn't that the core to get the kill onto that target? So we'll see how they play out the team fights, but it will or it could at least, because again, Uther's probably one of the better ones you can make that argument against.
Gale Force eSports is starting to get ahead in beacons, and with a Falstad flying in, Arthas and Genji might be in trouble in the top lane. Superstars will at least delay the beacon bottom, but Hosty has to juke and dive away from Fan if he can. One more auto attack, there's the deflect. Airho slows down Falstad, but now it's Airho who's in trouble. He's trying to use his slows to the best of his ability, and he will get Hosty out, but he will die for the efforts.
Respect to Fan, though, understanding when he was unable to get the kill onto one target. Granted, you know, Urho may have died no matter what, but that's something we see a lot of teams fail to do, is accept no matter how close the kill is, this target is never going to go down, changing the focus, making their time as effective as possible so they can get the kill, move outward here. It's a small thing, but it's something that a lot of teams and players, oftentimes a lesser one, may fail to do.
The issue now for Superstars is that Gale Force are about to hit heroic abilities, which means they can finally close out the rest of this beacon phase. Superstars could try to delay somewhere, hoping that maybe they can use a numbers advantage on one of the beacons to delay and stall out, but it's just not worth it getting into a heroic abilities fight. And with Gale Force getting heroics, they're going to go even so far as to take the boss on top of these beacons. And Superstars in a rough position.
Yeah, it's going to be very unlikely for them to be able to take it. Gale Force can just turn on them at any moment. There's the flight. Do we get the gust? No, it's going to wait a bit more. The boss is now the concentration for Gale Force. Urho moves right on in. Divine Storm is going to be what he meets first. Gale Force gets their very first pick, but Yoda's about to clean up if he can get one reset. He just needs one. He needs one. There's going to be the first. There's the second. There's going to be a third in a moment. Oh my goodness. That is now Gale Force falling apart. They did it. They get the boss, and they wipe 5 for 2. Superstars is back in this game.
Oh my goodness. That was insanely close. Flank from Yoda off the side. They didn't have heroics, Dread.
Remember when we talked about Yoda on the Li Ming, how he has impressive heroes, but whenever he touches this one, I'm like, this guy can win the game single-handedly, and I feel like that was a perfect example to understand if I get one reset, the dominance proc, the calamity, I can turn this fight, and he is willing to teleport over the wall in a position most would say is a dead Li Ming, but he did the math, he understands the circumstances, and he sets things to even. He pulled out the impossible, but still, with what they lost early on, Gilly, this is by no means Superstars' game. It's just even.
Dread, two things were so awesome there. A root swallowed, no hook, so we've got a few seconds to talk. Two things were so awesome. Gale Force, number one, we're not content just with the Zerg Rush with heroic abilities. They wanted more. They tried to get the utmost that they possibly could with their heroic abilities. It's just that the double resets were a bit too punishing, and that it took so long for them to try to be... They weren't able to take out one of those high damage dealers. But the Superstars were willing to fight without heroic abilities there because they saw exactly what they were able to do. That's not something that we know of Superstars, really. Their ability to come back when they're behind in a game, to make those kinds of aggressive plays, to fight without heroic abilities. I never would have thought that Superstars would be a team to do that, and that was incredibly awesome.
It's just such a thin line to kind of toe on. Hold on here. Mike is going to find no hook there.
But Airho's there. He's got the slow hanging on Mike of Utah.
Yeah, there's a bit of miscommunication on that initiation. Urho for one, and then, you know, Saray looking for a hook target on another. But yeah, again, Superstars, I completely agree. Mainly when looking at the overall playstyle, the lack of ability to come back into games, and they just abused every misplay on the side of Gale Force eSports. I'm not sold yet is kind of how I put that, though, because that was one fight where it's very apparent Gale Force, they thought they knew exactly what they could get away with, overstepped a bit, and again, it was amazing punishment here, but they need to carry that over beyond just one miracle boss fight, and it's going to start here over the next altar phase whenever it comes on.
Yeah, they're still down structurally somewhat. They've lost a fort. They were able to take out a fort, though, but importantly, Superstars have caught up in experience, and they're getting close to 13. Beacons will be activating in 10 seconds. 13 now here for Gale Force. Oh, Giant Killer, even without Seasoned Marksman, still getting Giant Killer for the double warriors of Superstars.
A lot of pressure available to the front lines whenever you have that Giant Killer on Falstad. Drag on to Genji, a little bit of DPS here. Here he goes, dash on out. But that is a big trade. Somebody's going to have to come up and get the heals there. Superstars, though, meanwhile, got their pressure up onto bottom. Both teams taking the Shrine where they have vision advantage over their opponent due to the lack of structure. Very smart coming out from them. Even an invade here from Superstars. They're not letting this game go easy at all. I'm very impressed, even with just that small thing. It's just like, well, if you're busy up on top, we're going to take the camp. They're just not giving up at all, anything.
The scary thing for Superstars now is this double global of Gale Force. Anytime Superstars aren't taking advantage, doing something somewhere, that's going to get a lot done as long as Gale Force are able to delay. Gale Force would definitely love to be able to get Zerg, but just the sheer fact that they're able to push a lane like they're doing right now with Falstad now on top of the keep means that Superstars has to be very efficient with every single action they take. And Gale Force is doing the exact same thing. They have already done half of that keep's damage with that Falstad, just being able to bait Superstars to hang around the bottom just a little bit longer.
And this is where Gale Force, you know, makes the argument as to why they commit to those double globals. They just play the map so beautifully. It is essentially, how I view it, is a bit of a dance, you know, and it's about as pretty as one when done well. The double global up on top, focusing onto the keep, and only a Genji to defend. And this is now, it's just going to be Gale Force waits until they draw aggro from Superstars, and if they fail to do so, they'll take the keep conveniently up on top. Fan is going to fly away though, and the focus looks like it is here down to bottom. Sray managed to make it out. Hook's going to be thrown, but no follow-up coming out from Iacona.
Superstars maybe being stretched too thin. They send Arthas to the top lane. Gale Force try to bully their way onto the bottom point, and then Dahaka stalks over to the top. Superstars will maintain the top, but with that keep going down, Gale Force has once again gotten a lead in experience as they work toward their level 16 talents. They can get some mercenaries out on the board. A boss is available too. Don't know that we'll see them try to make that kind of play, but Superstars could maybe try to bait Gale Force into some kind of boss, or in some kind of fight around that boss.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be necessary, not only because the 16 is a problem, but because that catapults are now going to be adding up. But Gale Force looks like they want this for themselves. Sray received the impale. The drag not landing there from Mike Udall. Yoda's just showing up saying, well, you've overextended. Look at this guy front lines on that Li Ming, but this time he is punished. Absolute follow-up there from Akaface, getting that Divine Storm. Now the root, the Burrow Awake. Gus is going to buy time. I mean, Gale Force is just playing with their food, it feels like.
Yeah. He had adaptation. I was like, why isn't he popping this adaptation? And I was like, oh, I see what it is. That bait was nuts. They were able to take out Li Ming. After that, too, you don't have to worry about Disintegrate, being able to stop Cocoon, even though Superstars were willing to use both Dragon Blade and Putrid Bow. And the minute that those come out, so does the Gust to stall things out, push away Superstars, and not allow them to get any value out of those two heroic abilities. Gale Force continuing to play smoothly, to make sure that their rotations are perfect. They're always doing something every single second of the game, and that's kept them a lead in experience, a lead in structures. They don't want to lose Mike, though.
Good dodge on that hook. Sray, he's been throwing them out left and right, but there hasn't been many moments, you know, we see the argument as to the Malfurion above all the other supports before even the secondary ban phase, just because whether the hook is missing or the root isn't there, the positioning of the Malfurion isn't necessarily there, and that doesn't always come down to maybe the skill of a player, but more the communication between the two has been very difficult so far through this game.
We've got a pause in the game, so we're just going to check and make sure that everything is ready to go to get back into game number 1. Superstars have been bringing the fight to Gale Force. They know what they need to do. They know that they need to be able to land these hooks. They have a great combination there. And then try to get in team fights where they can use the strong potential duo of Li Ming and Genji. And that worked out really well in the boss fight, but that was mainly Gale Force biting off more than they could chew there.
Yeah, and we saw like a really good argument as to why teams often do enjoy those double resets, because it legitimately was like, wait till one happens, and then suddenly the whole fight was completely watch Superstars just dominate Gale Force, even though they had a major disadvantage whenever things started out. But it looks like no, never mind. Things broke a little bit there. I got baited by my computer thinking we were up and running. Oh, we are. We're back into the game. Not web weavers, those are in fact not spiders. A bunch of Zerg here down below are moving over for Gale Force as they had 100. They have the 16 talents here and a level and a half advantage still.
Gale Force also have Dahaka to be able to push that top lane. And you can see Genji's hanging out there trying to make sure that the catapults are dealt with, the waves dealt with there, and that he can try to side soak as best as he can to get Superstars that pivotal 16. Being able to get a possible tenacious roots for Malfurion to hold people down a little bit longer. Pulverize is gigantic for Superstars. You see Stray stepping out actually to drop a slam, and he is punished for it.
Just a little bit too far out, and there goes K1 Pro with the Cursed Bullet. Everybody throwing down what they've got. They got another kill. Drag landing onto Hosey. The CC is real. And Gale Force once again showing their synergy as a group. Fans gonna get bait the flight. I thought for sure we might see that, you know, game-ending flight gust. He's gonna try, but nobody is going to be gusted away yet because Urho and the rest of the members, beautiful positioning, understanding that Fan was looking to end the game, but the drag and the kill. Gale Force finds another.
No Genji for 16 seconds, no Stitches for 3. Gale Force move on to the core. They still have the Guardians behind. The third one moves into position. Sray's gonna step back out using the slam. There's still no Pulverize. Malfurion gets taken out of Twilight Dream, and he'll be blown up as the core continues to fall. We're at 50% and going down rapidly as Gale Force eSports will take game number 1 convincingly over Superstars.
And it should be noted, the ending kills came down 10-5. The only kills that entire game Superstars was able to get was in fact that boss play. So like, just to put that in perspective, like where you were like, you know, Superstars actually put up a pretty good fight, and we know that that was very much a Gale Force being like, how far can we really push the envelope here, and got the punishment out, but that was legitimately the only signs of life. It really felt like we were able to get there from Superstars because Gale Force was abusing the globals, keeping up the pressure, and it just doesn't feel like anybody knows how to deal with it whenever they get those heroes.
Yeah, you can see the pressure that that puts on just in how Sray reacted once the Zerg was there. That he felt like, okay, we've drafted a composition that's sort of light on the wave clear. We don't have things like Moonburn as well, so I have to get out there and drop my slams. And then to move out and get punished for it instantly being lost there, and then King Caffeine quickly to throw out the cocoon as well. Gale Force eSports know the kind of annoying feelings that this type of composition puts into their opponents, and are able to abuse that very well by doing things like having the globals up in the top. Constantly, we saw Hosty not with the team, and yet Genji by himself doesn't really threaten a Dahaka and Falstad all that well. They were just like, well, that's fine. We see you here, Genji. We're still going to take your keep, thanks.
You want to know something that I find very interesting with Gale Force, and knowing that they're playstyle with the globals and they like to be